My mother, Mary Ann Vanderkoy, was fifth born of 14 children. They were an extremely poor family, but she had so much love and a deep faith in Jesus that she instilled in us. She was rich in so many ways. Mom always lived a life of quiet, strength, and unwavering faith. My mom was the nicest, most loving, kindness, unselfish person you would ever meet. She would always do for others before herself. Mostly I miss our conversations. I talk to her every day, at least once a day, and I could get her to laugh so easy. And it was so cute because the next day, if I talked to her, she would ask me that same subject that she laughed about the day before, and we'd talk about it again. And I also love talking to her about cooking, baking, and she knew everything about both those subjects.
Mary Ann was the fifth of 14 children, and I was quite a bit younger than her because I was the 13th. She was definitely the person I would call when I had cooking questions. She was an amazing cook. Her favorite reading material was a cookbook. Her homemade biscuits were wonderful, and pinwheels were always to perfection.
My mother's story began in a modest household where faith and family were the cornerstones of her life. She took care of my father, an early 4 a.m. riser and tireless worker even in his final days. My dad was a man of fire and drive, and my mom stood by him with quiet support, never wavering in her care for him until the end. She was a caregiver and a servant of Christ first and always. I always loved science and I always loved helping people. Medical school was quite difficult and it could be depressing at times. But whenever I felt down or depressed, I would call my mom and she would somehow lift my downtrodden spirits and make me feel happy and uplifted. She had a special way of always lifting us up through her faith, her patience, and kindness.
As her daughter-in-law, I could not have loved Mary Ann more. She was the best mother, mother-in-law, and grandmother anyone could ever ask for. She was a guiding compass, and it was absolutely no question or hardship to bring her into our home in Fond du Lac when her illness started to progress. Having Mary Ann in our home, part of our daily life, could not have been a bigger blessing. Watching our children bake side by side, snuggling and watching movies, or just visiting with her was a gift we will never regret.
As Mom's health began to decline, we were at a crossroads. How to care for a woman who had spent her life caring for everyone else. True to her nature, she didn't want to be a burden. She longed for dignity, peace, and a sense of freedom in her final days. After looking at other options close to her home, but having the gift of experience with patients and families who had their life journey end at the SSM Health Hospice Home of Hope, it was our only choice. It wasn't just a facility, it was a sanctuary. I had always been impressed by it because I had hundreds of patients stay there over the years. And the great care they received was just so humbling and powerful. I just felt so blessed to have a facility like that here that I could send my mom to for her final days.
The decision to bring Mary Ann to Hospice Home of Hope was not just about medical care, it was about honoring her life. The staff welcomed her with open arms, treating her not as a patient, but as family. They knew her son, they knew her story, and they knew how much she meant to those around her. Her room at the house was filled with so much love, her children and grandchildren. There was so much joy. But when COVID-19 closed visitation, it was the Hospice Home of Hope team who became her family. Well, one of the hard things about COVID-19 was us not being able to come in as her family into the room with her. However, the hospice staff really became her family then more than ever. The nurses and staff, the cooks such as Michael Schaefer were amazing to her. So Michael would come, during that time, he would come into each patient's room and take their orders. They bonded over their love of cooking. We had brought some recipes to the staff and Michael even cooked some of those for her as a special treat. treat. One of Mary Ann's favorite things to do, even though she could no longer cook, was read recipe books. So Michael had written a few of his own recipe books, so he would bring them in and share them with Mary Ann. He really became a special part of her family over their love of cooking.
You know, Mary Ann used the books that I brought her because then we would have a conversation about a certain recipe. And then she'd say, "Did you ever make this?" And I'd say, "No, did you?" "Oh yeah." And so then we would share, as cooks share, little tips or tricks or whatever that might be. So it was a means of conversation. It was a conversation starter.
Mary Ann was one of those patients that was just adorable. She was like the grandma that everybody wants to have. But Mary Ann was here during COVID, and COVID was a really dark time. These patients sacrificed coming here, and they had no family. So besides being, everyone's caregiver, we were also their family. A lot of phone calls. We actually had an iPad that we were using to FaceTime for some family members. A lot of window visitation. We tried to help in any way that we could so that the patients could see their family, they could experience the things that they needed to, even if it was through a window, through a phone call.
She would call me and talk to me about Michael and the great care she received. She also loved all of her caregivers, all of the nurses, RNs, LPNs, CNAs. She knew them all by name, and she just felt very comfortable with them.
Having the Hospice Home of Hope in Fond du Lac is such an incredible gift. I don't think many people in our community realize how fortunate we are to have this amazing facility with such an incredible staff here in Fond du Lac. I just wish people knew how positive of an experience it can be, not only for the patient, but for all of their family members and friends. It's allowed ourselves to go away from that caretaker role and just be there to love and support and nurture the family.
What makes this place so special, I think, is just that there are people here to walk with you, not just the person in the bed, but also the family, to help you through this journey, in a sense, of your loved one leaving.
There is a reason I haven't left, and it is because this place is amazing. We feel extremely fortunate, when I'm giving a tour to a new family. And I show them the rooms and their eyes light up and they say, "Oh my gosh, it's so beautiful." And I'll say, and if you feel like the room and board is too expensive for mom or dad or your wife or your husband, I said, we have funding through the hospital that can pay for all of the room and board or part of it, depending on what your finances look like. And I do feel like that's something that you don't find very often. A community that's really caring for the members of their own community, which is why it makes me so proud to be here.
She was at hospice for 13 months, and she would ask me, "Do you think God doesn't want me? Because I'm not supposed to still be here." And I said, "Mom, if God won't take you, none of us are going to heaven. You have a straight ticket to heaven, straight shot." I would always say to her, "I have some U-turns, a couple roundabouts, but you've got a straight shot to heaven."
As time moved forward and Mary Ann's illness progressed, we continued to reflect on the wonderful human being we were so fortunate to love so deeply. As her time on earth drew to a close, we found comfort in knowing that this patient, kind, loving, hardworking, and devout Catholic Christian was welcomed home by her loving husband, Harley.
On Thursday, November 19th of 2020, in the quiet embrace of the Hospice Home of Hope, my mother's extraordinary journey came to an end. A life defined by compassion, sacrifice, and unwavering love slipped gently from this world, leaving behind a silence that echoes in every corner of our hearts. She gave everything to those around her: her time, her strength, her laughter, and in her final breath, she took a piece of each of us with her. The ache of her absence remains a constant reminder of a love that can never be replaced. For my mom, the Hospice Home of Hope was the final chapter of a life lived with grace. Surrounded by those who loved her, she was able to rest, reflect, and be honored in the way she deserved. As a son, in the end, I can reflect on those days, the decisions we made and the care she chose. I can say she was always there for me, and in the end, we were there for her.
Hi, Grandma. I'm from St. Mary Springs, Vocal Jazz. We have a singing Valentine for you. More family.
Thank you.
How sweet it is to be loved by you, loved by you, by you. How sweet it is to be loved by you.